Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is timing. So we know that, or we hear that timing is everything, but sometimes we get impatient. And so we're going to take a look today at what it means to be in the flow and maybe to be able to optimize our timing, to be able to relax into the unfoldment of life. But before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. So let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding into your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, energizing all your cells, all your electrons, all your molecules, creating this brilliant beam of light from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's just gently press our palms together. Very softly rub your fingers against your palms to feel the deliciousness of that sensation, that tickling, the tingling, and allow yourselves to become present in this moment, right here, right now, in this remarkable physical form that enables you to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning, Rosalind. Rosalind says, good morning, everything in divine timing. Yes, so I think that this is an interesting conversation because while things exist in divine timing, we don't necessarily, sorry, my eye is just really itchy. We don't necessarily have an inroad into how that clock is ticking. Good morning, Lisa, welcome. We're talking about timing. So we often have a notion of how we think things should be unfolding and when. And when we talk about divine timing, it's not necessarily on our schedule, right? So we become impatient and try to push the river, so to speak, by making things happen. And yet, I think that there's a balance to be struck between allowing things to happen and so being in allowing doesn't absolve us from taking action. And this brings up another conversation in terms of taking action, because action without inspiration is really just kind of, it's falling into a doingness that that is not necessarily productive. So when we talk about timing, I think that we are natively connecting to this notion of inspiration also, that it is when we're in alignment, when the timing is right, when we're in alignment with divine timing, what's happening is that we're in a flow, we're connected, we're connected to inspiration, we're connected to you might even say like the messages of the universe, the communications of the universe, and or our higher selves, or whatever you want to call it. But we're in flow. And so what is it what is it that allows us to know when the timing is right? I wonder how that works for you. Where things, what is it that shifts to allow things to happen naturally, for things to just unfold uh, in a beautiful way? You know, how do we know when the timing is right? I'm wondering if that's something that you're tuned into. And if you are, like, what is it that you notice when the timing is right? One of the things that I notice is that there's no resistance. So, and I can look at this even in terms of like personal patterns. For instance, going on a cleanse. I just came off of or am coming off of an elimination diet where there were all kinds of constraints um, for allowing my body to start to heal, so that then I could discover what kinds of food sensitivities I have. So I get to start weaning myself off this see um, to see what works for me. And so the timing for starting that had to be right. How many times, Lisa says, everything flows, no hiccups. That's when we know that the timing is right. Good morning, Bernadette. Great to have you here with us. Welcome. We're talking about timing and how do we know that the timing is right? And so Lisa says everything flows, no hiccups. My thinking about it is that, that we don't have resistance. We're kind of moving along in alignment with ourselves, in alignment with whatever it is that is unfolding. So I was talking about this elimination diet. And so how many times have you tried to assert a discipline for yourself, whether it be exercise or diet or some other kind of discipline, and no matter how hard you tried, you just could not get yourself in alignment with it? Like where it just felt like pulling teeth, just where there was all this resistance and kind of fighting up river, right? Trying to swim up river against the tide. And then there are other times when it's effortless, where you don't even have to necessarily make a decision. Things just flow. And so, to your point, Lisa, that everything flows, no hiccups. How do we put ourselves in the presence of that opportunity? How do we, is it even something that we can invoke, where the timing is right? Is it something that we have to wait for? Or is it something that we feel into? How does it work? I'm not sure that I have answers for you. I'm positing these questions so that we can maybe have some level of discovery here about what is in play, and how we can find ourselves in that state of flow more frequently. So my sense is that what makes a huge difference is tuning into, like, being present. So when we're present, when we're able to tune in to what's here right now, this moment, then what happens is that we can be responsive to the requirements of the moment. So Bernadette says, I have a book called The Plan, and it allows me groups of foods to try to see how my body reacts. Different times in my life requires a change to stay in the flow. I think that's what I'm getting to here, Bernadette, for sure, is that that when when we're tuned in, while in our heads we may say, I want this, this, and this, and this to happen. I'm intending to manifest these particular results. And yet the timing isn't supporting that. The timing might be supporting movement in a different direction with a different focus for this particular moment. And so when we tune in, we can catch the flow of whatever that is, even though it might look like it's not serving our ultimate intention. So I love what you said, Lisa. Perfect timing here. I think first we fall into it, and then the energy tells you to run with it. Yes, so being able to find that flow, to be able to find the current, essentially, to be able to then jump into that current and flow with it. So Rosalind says insights can become more clear when you're more centered in your heart. Absolutely, when we're more present to our being. Rosalind goes on to say, when there's resistance, there's an opportunity to turn inward when life is not working. And of course, the perception that life is not working is just a perception, right? And it's feedback. It's where there is resistance. It's an indicator that there's some way that we're not actually flowing with life. And what is the judgment that life isn't working? It is maybe that it's not responding to us or allowing us to be or supporting us in that particular moment in moving in the direction that we decide we should be moving in, right? Not necessarily that that life isn't working, but just that we're in resistance to what's unfolding. And it's very interesting, there's this kind of dichotomy to try and find a place of presence in the face of intending, manifesting. These are the things I'm intending. This is what I'm looking forward to in shaping my day or shaping my life. These are the things that I'm looking to have unfold in my experience. And then also recognizing that maybe that's not happening right in this moment, and then finding a way to be in a place of allowing, we're allowing things to unfold in ways that we hadn't anticipated or that we hadn't necessarily desired, right? Bernadette says change can be complicated. Yes. So it may be that life has certain things in store for us or in line for us that we don't anticipate, that there are greater things at work perhaps than our perceptions of how we want things to unfold, or we intend for things to unfold. And it may be that sometimes what looks like a left turn is getting us on the exact path that our higher intention is directed toward. So it's very interesting to be like what you're talking about, Bernadette. Change can be complicated. Well, change by its nature means moving into something that is unfamiliar, right? And so when we're making that kind of transition, what happens is that there is typically a dismantling of what currently exists. So we might come to a place of questioning ourselves, questioning our motives, questioning our values, questioning our priorities as things shift. Or we might be experiencing lots of resistance that is kind of forcing the shift, right? Where we're realizing, there's all this resistance, there's all this conflict that is requiring us to reevaluate, Good morning, Robin. Welcome. Great to have you here with us this morning. We're talking about timing, timing and change and resistance. Bernadette says, I find sometimes the unknown we may fear or resist can be the perfect spot we are meant to be. Absolutely, Bernadette. So that's where this whole timing thing comes in. Good morning, Elaine. Elaine says, hello, beautiful and lovely ones. Welcome to you this morning, Elaine. We're talking about timing and what does it look like to let things unfold as they will, and also be at cause in life. It might seem like a paradox, but I think that when we are clear about our intentions, this is kind of also an opportunity to talk about the distinction between goals and intentions. So when we're clear about our intentions allow space for a variety of manifestations. You know, when we can, for instance, let's say I'm throwing a party. This was actually an example with one of my clients that they were having a party, and in the past, they had goals about what that party would be like and how all these things would be perfect. And when they had an idea of what a great party looked like, specifics. And when they shifted from having a great party, like the goal to be having everything all ready, and it shifted to an intention for connection and enjoyment, then all the details became less important. When things messed up, you know, when a vase got broken and or whatever, it was no big deal because it didn't affect the intention. The intention was still have a connection, have authenticity, enjoy. Then the things that showed up to disrupt were not really disruptions at all. So Lisa says, I'm feeling a resistance in myself with this move. I need to pack, but I feel like I'm stuck in cement. I'm pretty sure it's my past issues, not timing, but I had to ask myself. So Lisa, you're talking about change, and this is some serious big change, right? You're moving from a house that you've been in for some time and packing stuff up and moving to a place that you're really excited about. You can create this as a transformation, and maybe that's where the resistance is coming in, is allowing this to be the beginning of a new life. So maybe when you're talking about moving, there's a letting go. There's a letting go of what is currently, or what's letting go of the familiar. And you can make it a big thing if you want to. You can make it stepping into an entirely new life. That might make the resistance more. It might make the resistance less. You get to feel into that. Bernadette says, I myself am in the same place. I resonate well with that comment. So I guess, you know, I wonder if when you're packing, you know, part of that is sorting through stuff and maybe making peace with our past, right? And choosing to let go of certain aspects of self. And okay, so Lisa says, true, I'm walking away from a 30-year marriage. So that's a biggie. And so here's the thing, okay, walking away from a 30-year marriage is very different than walking into a new life. And if you feel into the experience of those two different comments, or those two different perspectives, I would imagine that they feel very different. So walking into a new life, you know, like walking into a new opening, versus walking away from something that is your, it feels like walking away from something is feeling the pull of that, trying to hold you in place, versus stepping into freedom and new possibility. Feel into it, Lisa, and notice what the difference is. And instead of looking at what you don't want anymore, maybe look at what do you want to carry into this new phase of your life, and see, just feel into that and notice what feels better to you. Because this is happening for you now. And so we're going to presume that the timing is right. So Bernadette says, it's a matter of the move being placed into the unknown at this time. Not having that security is worrisome for me. So it's interesting. I remember years and years ago, I wasn't nearly as conscious or whole as I feel these days. And I was in a relationship, and it was really not a good relationship. And I remember thinking, the devil you know is better than the devil you don't, right? In other words, being able to, I found myself willing to stay in something that I was really unhappy with, because I was more afraid of the unknown than the thing that I was unhappy with. And that's kind of a sad place to be, right? Like, the unknown really truly is what we face in every moment. We project our knowingness into the future to believe that things are predictable and familiar. And the truth is that in any moment things can change. There's maybe greater probability that things will stay similar or familiar, but in any moment things can change. And so the security is a fabrication, truly. Bernadette says, Lisa, for me, it wasn't 30 years, but relatable. It becomes empowering, existing for yourself. Yeah. So the unknown is something we get to create. We get to fill in the colors, right? It's kind of like a blank canvas, and we get to fill in the colors. And the tendency, a blank canvas can be really intimidating, because you can put anything on it. And so sometimes it's nice to have outlines that you can then color in. And so maybe there are outlines that you can create for yourself. And it's funny because, I was thinking, well, we get to draw boxes to put ourselves in. We don't really want to do that. But Lisa says, when do you move? I'm going in 2 weeks. Wow, Lisa, that's amazing. So I'm just looking at ways to get yourself in motion. I think once in motion, it's easier to stay in motion. We get to overcome that inertia, and once we get in motion, then we can be more consistent in continuing that motion. Elaine says, loving blessings, everyone as life continues to unfold for all in this now. And Bernadette says, I have 2 months as it's a new situation. So this is a time of great change for all of us, I think. There's a lot of disruption, a lot of stuff going on with people in relationships, and healing longstanding situations, making transformations. there's a lot available for us in the moment. And as we are faced with change, the more we can find our own centeredness within ourselves, the more resilient we'll be able to be in the face of whatever is unfolding. So Rosalind says the gateway to all understanding is to see things the way they are. Now, the thing is, and I'm adding this myself, is that we project onto everything. So seeing things the way they are is being able to step outside of ourselves to our greatest capacity, to be present without judgment or story around things. So Rosalind says we create our own reality. Coming full circle is discerning an aligned yes or an empowered no. Beautiful. I love, love, love that, Rosalind. An aligned yes or an empowered no. We have presence to say, I want more of that or less of that. And this is being tuned in to what's going on with you. It's being in alignment with yourself. And Lisa says, we're in an ascension. Yet, well, there's certainly a lot of change. And Rosalind says we have preferences. It's true. And when we are present to ourselves, we can tune into those preferences. Anyway, thank you, thank you, thank you. This time just flew by this morning, as it so often does. Anyway, I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. I go live here each weekday morning on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page. And I invite you to check out all the awesome programming on Enlightened World Network, EWN One with the Earth, Enlightened World Living. And I just so thank and appreciate all of you for your engagement with these conversations and considerations, and for your sharing. Until next time, so much love to you.